Like you say, that's a problem. Especially after that. You hear somebody singing good, and you start thinking you can sing, right? So, I know how it is. My brother, my spiritual father in this journey, man, this is the guy, man. This is the guy. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. As I said last night when he received his award for who he is and what he has been and what he continues to be in this community, Masjidul Waritheen, and now this gives me opportunity to edit that. The Bay Area Muslim community, possibly California, but I'm certain about the Bay Area, Northern California Islamic community would not be the same if this brother had not been in it. Trust that. Trust that. Like George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if Abdul Raoof hadn't been a part of this community, I don't know where we'd be Potter's Field, man. But some of y'all don't mess with them white folks' Christmas stories. Well, they play it every year. I don't know how you can miss it. My brother, we call him Sheikh. It's a name of how you say endurance, terms of endearment. Because there ain't no question about Sheikh. In his case, Imam Salim, we're gonna make an exception. In his case, he said, "This is a Sheikh that can bring the water." Right? Not only can he bring the water, he can dig the well.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah nabda. I wanted to sit down because I've been having trouble with this right knee since the last couple of weeks, but no, I'm going to try to stand. That way I can probably make it briefer because we've heard enough to motivate us for what we were trying to bring to you. What's already been brought by our brother, and we appreciate him. In fact, I've been privileged to be with him the last year and a half in Los Angeles, and so I'm well aware of the blessing that we have in him, and I'm glad that you were able to share that a little bit today with his presentation. So I didn't really have a well-planned subject. In fact, I got my subject last night from Imam Salim. He obsolete in one thing he said. And that thing is, I'm going to edit it a little bit, but we have to know that Allah is with us and that Allah is guiding us. That Allah is with us, that Allah is guiding us. And that's what was displayed by our brother, and actually this whole weekend. And many other signs. You know, I work in the prison system, and of course, you know, all over the country, especially in California, the biggest prison system in the world. And California is the biggest prison system in the United States, which has the biggest prison system in the world. And the thing that separates, and they're giving our children, our young men and women to some degree too, long, long prison sentences. Many life sentences over and over again. And the thing that separates the people who benefit from being in that situation or survive that situation and come out intact is their ability to find hope in that bleak situation. And the reason why Islam is growing there and has always grown there, even before our awakening in 1975, has been that it had an ability to bring hope into a hopeless situation. And so the men and women who succeed and survive, as we say, they find that there, one way or another, and many of them find it in Islam. And so my presentation will be a little historical. It'll be some stories. I don't go back too far, but there'll be some stories about. But it's mostly about this structure you're in, where you are in this. You're here in our home, and we're very pleased to have you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this situation that we're in here, Masjid Waritheen specifically. And has been mentioned a few times, some of our history on and off over the last 40 years in this house here. I'll go back actually to really one of the great big signs for me that Allah was still with us, because we believe during the days of the Nation of Islam that Allah was with us then, although we didn't have the right details. We had the right broader picture, but not the finest details. But one thing that was so amazing to me, and some of you who don't know the history of the nation, the leader of the nation, the undisputed leader of the nation, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he actually died in 1975. But what was unique about him dying was that he died before the day of our mass convention. We were already had planned for weeks and months to go to Chicago, to be there, to hear him, because in his latter days his health wasn't well, so he basically only spoke one time a year, and that's at that convention. We called it Savior's Day, February 26th, in that case, 1975. The last time I heard him was February 26, 1974. He got sick, gravely sick, in which we knew he was sick, but we didn't expect him to die. And he died the day before the convention. And so even going to the convention, I heard it on the radio, and when I was going through Missouri, you know, Caucasian news commentator, the leader of the black Muslim died tonight. Everybody in the car said, man, turn that thing off, the devil's lying. The devil's lying. We refused to believe it. Wouldn't believe it. I happened to be the only one in the car with my traveling letter. In the Nation of Islam, you couldn't go from city to city without a letter of authorization. It's called a traveling letter, giving you permission from the temple you was in to go wherever you say you was going. They had to know that you were up on your duty. You were selling your papers, you were paying your poll rate, you were bringing guests you was a regular attendant. You wasn't a renegade, basically. Because if you came to that temple and they weren't sure about you, or you didn't happen to have your letter with you, you can't get in. They call him back to, if you were from Los Angeles, they call him Los Angeles, blah, blah, blah. Brother Captain, we got Brother Donald 2X, what kind of soldiers? Throw that nigga out, he's gone. or something like that. Or if he was good, he just happened not to have gotten his letter, or then he's going to be able to go in and pass. So I was the only one in the car with the letter at the time. So when we got to Missouri, to St. Louis, you know, I go into the mosque, and the brother's staying in the car. And now I'm probing for. Actually, that's the second time I heard that Honorable Elijah Muhammad was dead. So when I was we drove through Los Angeles first, and I had a brother who was in the ministry down there. He told me, he said, "Man, the messenger gonna die." And everybody here taking their pistol. I said, what? I wouldn't even tell the brothers in the car I was riding with. So when the Caucasian said it on the news again, that's the second time I heard it now. It's registering with me a little stronger. So now I'm going to the mosque, and I'm going to probe. My ears is tuned to see I wasn't going to ask that Honorable Elijah Muhammad dead. I'm just going over there with my sensitivities keen. So I go in, and showed the brother my letter, and then he started giving me a rah-rah talk. I said, oh, man. He didn't say that Elijah Muhammad was dead also, but he kept talking to me in a way as if, we got to keep on, and it was sounding like a confirmation, really. Sure enough, we got to Chicago a few hours later, and that was the case. But the beautiful thing about it, even in our sadness, was that it happened when we were all there, and we going to Chicago, and all the leaders were there, and all the believers who could get there were 15 to 20,000 people there, and the little imam was there too. He was the son of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and everybody came and they confirmed the new leadership. Wasn't no gunplay that I saw. Everybody came and gave their pledge of allegiance. They gave their bay'ah, we call it bay'ah these days, to that the new leader, no disagreement from Minister Farrakhan on down, all the great leaders in our association confirmed that they gave their support to the new leader. So that was a miraculous, that was a sign. That was a sign, looking back especially, that Allah is working with us. Allah hadn't abandoned. He's in our situation. And that transition was as smooth as you could possibly imagine, given the circumstances and the kind of training and the thinking that we had at that particular time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passing, we were here in Oakland. We sold our building. We had a building in West Oakland. We made about, I think, $20,000 from the sale. We still have the check. And so the Imam, rest in peace, Minister John Fakir, he spotted this building, this site right here, prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad dying. So he sent in a request to Chicago to purchase this building. But as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was sick, everything was on hold. He died, and so we had to wait until things got settled in Chicago. A few months later, the Imam is in position now. The request was sent back in, and he sent Abbas Rasul out here. Abbas Rasul was the national secretary. And he saw the project, obviously gave his positive consent to it, took it back to Chicago, and the Imam agreed to buy this building. The building cost $300,000, which was maybe millions of dollars back then. It's 1975. And the Imam sent a check for $300,000. We were the talk of the real estate town here, because we paid cash. We didn't get the mortgage. We paid cash, $300,000 cash. And the man who handled the sale was one of the biggest black African-American brokers, and he knew that was big business to pay $300,000 cash at one time, no mortgage or nothing. That was his best sale ever. In fact, he agreed to train. He said, "I'll train any of your members who want to go into real estate." And later on, I took him up on that. And I worked for his firm for about 25 years, starting in 1980 until he changed locations. I worked for his firm, and he returned to Allah now. But he always would tell me over and over again, about once a month or 2 months, about that deal. So I know how it resonated. So we purchased this house. We moved in November 1975. Another beautiful thing about it that showed that Allah was working with us. Imam Muhammad had a different idea than his father. His idea was to decentralize leadership, to decentralize the Nation of Islam was hierarchical. It top down. If you wasn't on the top, you don't know what's going on the top. You only know your level and below. On the top is, it's like, the Wizard of Oz. You know something's happening, but you don't know how it's happening. Except for what we were told according to our catechism, and we believed it. And for what we could see it was producing, we had confidence in it. So the Imam had a different idea. His idea was to localize the leadership, to spread it out, to put it in different places, to give responsibility to the little one on top, all the way up. Not just to have the responsibility up here and the little one is just following orders. So what he did, I think most of the lands were owned at that time, because we had a big portfolio of properties around the country, and most of it was under progressive land developers. They held our farmland, they held some of the office buildings and the apartment buildings that we held across the nation. And like I say, it was mysterious, so I don't know all the details. But what the Imam did, he not only purchased this building, he put it in our local name, in our local name. All right? And this was a miraculous thing. It was unusual in that sense, because it didn't belong to, he didn't claim it for himself. He claimed it for us and gave it to us and gave us a responsibility of managing it in whatever way we saw fit over time. Although from time to time he would make recommendations for us, he didn't assume that responsibility. He wanted us to assume that responsibility, and it was a big responsibility. And it came into play because a few years later, after Imam's leadership, he began to make changes. Then some of the family of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to say the properties that were acquired under the Nation of Islam's time were personal properties. and that they belong to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that they should be part of his estate that goes to them after he died. So a probate fight initiated. And this was happening. Many of you know if your relatives dies in your family, sometimes your brothers and sisters start arguing over a little piece of land, a little piece of money or something, and things break out like that. Happened in the Nation of Islam. We fought a probate battle for about at least 10 years. At least 10 years. To try to prove that this was a community property. It was the general community, not the personal property of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Well, in the end, the probate court sided with the people who said it was personal property. And all that property that was under that holding company was jeopardized. I don't know how it got redistributed, but I know we lost a lot of property, including Mosque Mariam. Mosque Mariam. We got Mosque Mariam, which is the headquarters in Chicago for the reconstituted Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan now. That was a property that we acquired because Colonel Gaddafi lent us $3 million in 1971 or 2 or 3, somewhere along that, to buy that property. And we were paying him back $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year under the Imam's leadership after he came in. Well, the Imam stopped demanding big money from us. He said, no, you keep your money locally, and if you have anything extra over that, then you send it. Whereas we had always sent all our money there, and if we had anything left, we used it for ourselves. Usually we didn't have nothing left. So money stopped going into the central leadership coffers in Chicago, and so paying for that building became a burden on us in Chicago. Imam got on a plane, flew to Libya, and he asked of the Libyan government to grant us some consideration for that big debt that we still owed them. He said no sooner than he asked it, they forgave the debt. And that property became ours. But it was under that old, whatever holding company it was being held under. And in the probate court, somewhere along the line, I think that was lost too. But I'm trying to point out some factors that let us know that Allah has been guiding us. Allah has been working with us. Allah never abandoned us. You have to have that hope. You have to have that hope. And so there was a practical example. Of course, it's been mentioned a couple of times that this is the house in which Muhammad, the one who was Elijah Muhammad's teacher, the Imam. In 1970, our Imam in the transition was John Fakir. And he's going to change that. Jazakallah khair. As Brother Abdul Raoof, if you all know, he keeps us being able to hear us and to see us and to see our message, see the Imam's message, and has been doing it for 30 or 40 years himself. But he got his training. He was the paper lieutenant. So in San Francisco, so that served him well, all that training. So I lost where I was. Okay, so Fard Muhammad, John Fakir, John BX came from Buffalo, New York. He came out here in 1974 to replace our previous Imam, a minister in the Nation of Islam, and he's the one that found this building. He was the minister in the transition. He married me in this building when we still have chairs here in the masjid. In the masjid, we were facing this way. This is before we learned how to pray and before we had Jummah here, 1976. That's when Qasim came out here. I heard him praying. We began to the study of the language through transliteration, learning the prayer, how to say Al-Fatiha, and learning the steps of the prayer. I got married in 76 and May 29th, alhamdulillah, and I made a big faux pas last night. I forgot to mention my wife, but she understands how I am. Yeah, I heard, he got it. I heard you, and I appreciate it. My wife, that's my wife Zainab, who was working with Allah Akbar, working with, and we couldn't be here without Allah for sure, but I couldn't be here without Zainab either. Yeah, so Allah Akbar. So we were married here, and she immediately got pregnant. I planned to go to Africa in the end of 76. And when I left, we had chairs in the masjid. And we were facing this way. But we had been studying how to do the prayer and what have you. When I came back, Imam Muhammad had replaced John Fakir by Muhammad Abdullah. I wasn't here when it happened, but they said he was on the rostrum here, and he asked Muhammad Abdullah, would you be our Imam under the condition that you use Yusuf Ali's translation of the Quran? Because he, Imam, knowing he came from Ahmadiyya influence. And our influence, of course, in the nation was we used Maulana Muhammad Ali translation of the Quran. And the primary reason I believe that we use that translation, well, there are many reasons, but one of the primary reasons is because one ayat translation in the Quran, in the Maulana Muhammad Ali translation, that's in no other translation in the Quran in the same way that you're going to find. I have never seen one. And it says, on that day, the guilty blue eyes will be gathered. This particular ayat, I can't remember the ayat. Some of you know it. Tell me if you remember. The guilty blue eyes will be gathered. And so we would select that out and say, see, the Quran said the white man is a devil. It says it in the Quran. Because it says on that day the guilty blue eye would be gathered. So that was a strong reason that we didn't really want to give that translation up. But the Imam knew that about Muhammad, so he made him promise not to use that. No, I don't know whether he would have anyway, but that was the condition that he placed on him. He accepted that condition. He became our Imam in 1977, and he stayed our Imam for 2 years. About half of that time, I think he had a heart attack in the masjid. The transition process was a miracle, and by standards of what we were coming from and what we were going through and the people the Imam was dealing with, not only here, but even in the prison system, it should have been it's considered a bloodless revolution. There were some minor scrapes here and there. but I'm saying, but if you added it all up and summed it all up and counted the numbers and the people and all that and our history and background and the places where it was a bloodless revolution. But it was stressful, and especially with you in the leadership. And so this man, who we know as Muhammad Abdullah, he became our Imam. He began to give us lessons in traditional, as far as we knew, practice of Islam. And but his community knew that he had an association with Ahmadiyyas. And for those who don't know about Ahmadiyyas, in some Islamic circles, they're considered not heretical. They have some beliefs that are questionable. In fact, some of their beliefs are close to the beliefs that we incorporated in the Nation of Islam, and this is another indication that perhaps that's where our teachings in the Nation of Islam were influenced by and came from. And so once I went over to San Francisco to the Islamic Center over there, and and he was Pakistani too. He was the Imam or some dignitary over there. He said, "Yeah, I hear you have this man of Muhammad Abdullah. He's your Imam." I said, "Yeah, Imam." He said, "This man is Ahmadi." He said, "You should kill him." That's what he told me. He said, "You should kill him." I said, "No." I said, "Well, if he was," I said, we must have converted him, because I never heard any Ahmadi teachings coming from him. So either he got converted by us, because at one time, years before, he was a member of that association over there, some kind of dignitary in there. I said, "Well, why didn't y'all kill him?" I mean, it didn't make sense to me. So this is some of the kind of silly stuff they bring to us. Even today, this is kind of some of the silly stuff that's coming from some of these other quarters. So at any rate, he stayed our imam for 2 years, and we benefited greatly from his presence. The imam would always come and show him the highest respect whenever he came here. And there was rumors then that he was somebody special. And the first rumor I remember hearing about him came from our old thinking about the Nation of Islam, because in the Nation of Islam we had this belief that there were 24 scientists that controlled the planet. And I remember a brother telling me one day, yeah, he one of the 24 scientists. Huh? You know, it was not till years later where the imam himself began to intimate, and not sometimes in more direct language than others, that he was Fard Muhammad. But that's another question. So his leadership here ended because we were having some transitional issues with the school. He had an assistant who had a kind of harsh personality. He was a Lebanese. He was from Tripoli, Lebanon. He was our Islamic studies instructor. He was over the school because Muhammad Abdullah was sick, so he would only send his instructions here, and this man would try to carry out his instructions. But people didn't like him. Plus, he was a light-skinned Arab, and he had a harsh personality. He didn't smile a lot. You know, he had some issues. And so we began to have some physical problems here because he spoke unwisely to some of the children in the school. And so there was actually fights, a couple of fights that broke out. And then he also spoke unwisely to one older sister, and one of the older brothers who had that Nation of Islam pedigree picked up one of those chairs and hit him in the head with a chair. And he came to Jumu'ah bandaged up with the blood leaking out, with the blood spot protruding from the. And so when the imam began to hear about all those reports were going to Chicago, and then some people decided they was going to ban him from the school. They came at early in the morning. They would stand outside and say, you ain't coming to school no more. Actually, what happened, he spit on a little boy who was in the school. The little boy didn't want to be in the school because our population of the school, some of them were not Muslims. And this little boy didn't really want to be in the school. So he figured out a way to get out. Just act up, get out the school. So what he did, he broke Ghazi's lights out of his car, his headlights, and cracked his windshield, and the Ghazi spit on him. And Ghazi told me, he said, this is what we do to little devils in our country. They act like devils, we treat them like that. So he spit on. So that got around, oh man, that's racism, how people interpret it. So eventually the imam, the complaints got so high that the imam decided he had to end this situation. So he came out, and he was very, very wise in how he came out to actually remove Fard Muhammad, if he was Fard Muhammad Abdullah, from his position in leadership. And I remember him saying something like, we're going to ask you to be our leader in the future when we grow up. He was fine, the man, but the man was wise. So prior to this, Imam A.K. Hassan had been sending up a brother from Los Angeles to try to mediate these issues that were happening. His name was Imam Andrew Hassan, rest in peace, another great contributor to the Nation of Islam. They called him Andrew Can Do. Yeah, that was his moniker. And he came in to try to solve this problem. And so the people were complaining to him about Ghazi and these other situations. So the imam said, okay, well, y'all like Andrew, make him be your imam. So he got ratified to be the imam. So he stayed our imam for about a year. So this is 1979, now this is almost 1980, and then the people start complaining against him. Because in the year or 2 years or 3 years of this other leadership, we had grown some from their influence, from learning, from the changes that the imam was making. The imam used to have his fourth Sunday hookups. It used to be packed like this on fourth Sunday, people sitting on the roster, and he'd be speaking from Chicago over the speaker every fourth Sunday. And he'd give it. Well, I remember one time us coming in here, because it's 2 o'clock in Chicago, that means it was 12 o'clock here. They 2 hours ahead. And he spoke from 12 o'clock to Maghrib time in the summertime. And didn't nobody move for all 8 hours, or 10 hours, whatever it was. So we were learning, we were growing in the religion. So when Imam Hassan became the Imam, people became dissatisfied. Oh, you're not learning enough Arabic. You're not doing it. You're not. And so within a year or so, the Imam had to come back out here. This time when the Imam got out, you got to help me with the dates a little bit, because I didn't really go back and do the detailed research, which my academic training says I should have did, with the footnotes and all that. But that's for the book. So he comes back out, Imam comes back out here and said he was throwing his hat in the ring to be the Imam. Imam Muhammad, W.D. Muhammad. Yeah, so he became the leader. He became our Imam in about 1980. And he stayed our Imam for about 9 months, almost a year. And as we were welcoming him, we never had an official welcome for him. We had an official welcome for him at the end of this time. It was a national welcome, but it was regionally administered from LA to here. And it was a beautiful welcome. But the next day, the Imam said he was leaving. He said, I got too many enemies here. That's what he said. Too many hypocrites. Okay, yeah. So it was like, what? But we benefit. He traveled a lot while he was here, but he was here enough for us to imbibe his spirit, his presence. He taught a class. He taught Arabic class. He had a leadership imams. He didn't just have an imams class. Had it for the sisters class too, because the sister imam, when he first came in, he made sisters imams. The Islamic world went up in arms on that one. He backed up a little bit, and we started calling him another instructions, right? But the imam was moving the yard line. But he had a plan, he had an idea, he had a concept, and he was moving. Many of these things that you hear the Islamic world trying to talk about, Imam had in mind to do. Some things he overreached and he backed up. Some things he was slow and he sped up. Of course, the community was different people responded differently. Some people thought he was going too fast, right? Saying, oh man, I can't get that Arabic, man, and some people thought he was going too slow. Because as he introduces the stuff, then some aggressive students began to study on their own. And they began to say, well, why are we not doing this? This is in Islam too. But the Imam was going at the pace that he thought he can capture the most of his people and keep them and move them forward. He couldn't go at the pace of the fastest ones, of course. He couldn't go at the pace of the slowest ones. Slowest one, somebody wanted to stay with the old teachings, And so all this transpired. Of course, a manifestation of that was Minister Farrakhan. After about 3 or 4 years of the leadership, Minister Farrakhan decided he wanted to go back to the old teachings. He wanted to go and get the people who had got left behind because of these changes that came about. And then those who wanted to go faster thought the Imam wasn't going faster enough. This is not derogatory I'm saying about him, because he said this himself about himself, Imam Siraj Wahaj. They began to criticize the Imam because the Imam wasn't given the proper concept of Jesus. He was saying, because by default, we believe that Jesus had a father in the Nation of Islam. We had books that showed he was buried in Kashmir or something, all kind of beliefs that really came from Ahmadiyya teachings. A lot of it came from Ahmadiyya teachings. So the issue came up about Jesus' his birth. And so, because the Imam hadn't dealt with it in detail, he had a lot of other things to deal with. Then, by default, many people were still believing Jesus had a father. But the Islamic belief is that Jesus didn't have a father. We believe in Immaculate Conception, just like similar to how the other faiths, Christianity believes. And so that became an issue in Brooklyn, or in wherever it is. Was it Brooklyn? Yeah. That was one of the key issues. And the Imam went in there, and he clarified himself. because there was going to be a split in the community, and he clarified that he never said that Jesus had a father. He said Jesus had a creator. But he hadn't dealt with it in a detailed way as the brothers wanted him to. And so many of them went on to other associations. They left our association, went to other things. But years later, of course, Imam Siraj's on the roster with the Imam sitting there, he said, "You were the wise teacher, and I was the impatient student." It was beautiful. And the Imam said, "I'm glad you left, so that you can spread your wings. You can spread your wings, and because we were moving at another pace." So it was very beautiful. So Allah was with it. So I'm taking too much time, so I'm gonna have to condense it. All right. So John Fakir, he stopped being our Imam. John Fakir is a unique person too. In 1971 or 72, when the greatest prison revolutions happened, revolt happened in Attica, which the prisoners took over the prison, Attica, New York. Among them, of course, were Muslims, and they took over hostages. They were like 70, 80 hostages, maybe 100, I can't remember. And the hostages were marked for death by the prisoners. They were marked for death. And some of the prisoners wanted to kill them one at a time. You know how to do, kill one, show you serious, kick him out the door, something like that. But the Muslims guarded the prisoners and said, "No, we ain't killing them like that. We're not doing that." So it was a big tension that went on inside the prisoners. And John Fakir went in there. He helped in the negotiation that eventually ended in the authorities decided that they would do what they wanted to do, and they came in there with weapons and killed up. They were responsible for killing more people than the prisoners. But many of the people who were saved gave credit to the Muslims, and this was before we was still saying the white man was the devil, and most of them was white people, right? But we protected. If you go back and read the history of that Attica prison riot, they're going to tell you about the Muslims, and in the testimony of those, because it was a long trial afterwards, I think 40, 50 people got killed in retaking the prison. The governor of New York, I think it was Lindsay. Who was it, governor? Rockefeller, okay, yeah. So John Fakir came out here after that. When he was replaced by Muhammad Abdullah as the Imam, he began to work more directly with the biggest prison and the most notorious prison in California, San Quentin Prison, right over across the bridge. And he became the first paid chaplain in the California prison system that worked every day. There were others, A.K. Hassan and Earl Shaw, rest in peace. They were organizers, but they didn't work every day in the prison. John Fakir was the first paid chaplain in the prison, and we began to go in there and work with those prisoners. And he was responsible for not allowing those, he set an atmosphere where the transition, because the prisoners had to be in 1975, 95% of prisoners who were Muslims in prison were followers of the Nation of Islam. You might have found out 2 or 3% that call themselves Sunni Muslims or Orthodox Muslims. That's because they followed Malcolm after Malcolm left the nation and considered themselves Orthodox Muslims. It might have been 2 or 3. It might have been 99% were in the Nation of Islam. So that they had to go through this transition too. And prison is not a place where changes are made without bloodshed. Yeah, space, time is all negotiated with weapons and strength and power, stuff like that. John Fakir went in there and he allowed that transition to take place without not being wholesale blood. You know, they killed George Jackson over there on the yard. It was on the yard. What did they kill him at? Anyway, so it's AC, Adjustment Center. Yeah. So he allowed it, but we didn't hear of any major violence taking place because he was a tough man. He was dedicated to the cause. And I don't know if the Imam had that in mind when he replaced him with Muhammad Abdullah, but I'm just trying to show you how Allah was working with us. Allah was in control of this thing. And he brought the right people and put them in the right place to do the right things to get the results that we're living with today. So, and we began, and throughout the California prison system, we began, and this is because of the imam. The imam came out here, and he made a statement to the prison authorities about what he expected of Muslims under his association and in prison, because the guys in prison were making demands. They wanted halal food, they wanted to have Jummah, they wanted to be able to wear kufis, they wanted to have prayer rugs. What else? They wanted thicker beads, they wanted thicker beads, and they want oil, especially oils, because oil is like money in there. The aromatic oil, scents, like money in the prison. In fact, I had a program where whoever learned the Quran in Arabic, and we would help them with translation, Muslim or non-Muslim, I give them a little oil. And so it's like money in there, you know. And so brothers learn, and then I would tell the brothers, whoever helped somebody learn the Quran, they would get the oil for helping the one to learn, and he would get some oil too. So those are things they were asking for, but at the time they weren't permitted. So when the imam came in, he didn't emphasize any of that, and many people got angry at the imam because he said, "Oh, our religion is sensible and portable. If you can, we don't eat no pork." He told the prison official, and you can find some of this in the Religion on the Line, the book called The Religion on the Line, because it was a transcript of his interview with the prison. And so he downplayed everything. The only thing he emphasized, he said, do not censor our books. Don't make us have to go through another chaplain for us to get our books. But in terms of thicker beads, he said, we can pray anywhere, you know. Our religion is portable, you know. Halal food, at the time, we weren't even eating halal out here. They were asking for halal in prison. Imam said, the brothers we forfeit our rights when we violate the law. We understand that. He said, and he told the brothers in prison, if they put pork on your plate, just move it out the way and eat the rest of the food. Well, the imam's enemies came back and said, Imam Muhammad said we can eat pork. They telling brothers they can eat pork. No, he didn't say that. But he didn't overemphasize this idea that they needed to have halal foods at that time. So many of them began to have to make these comments. So Imam Fakir and the other imams in there at the time had to deal with those kind of misconceptions about it. On to so Imam Muhammad, when he left here, under those circumstances, the day after he was talking right up there, he said, you people here, you need a man with a stick. Our brother had been on death row in 1971, and the only reason why he wasn't dead because they outlawed the death penalty. Imam Abu Qadr al-Amin. He said he carries a stick. He said because the imam got to be able to slay devils. Yeah, he got to go right over here and slay a devil, but keep the khutbah going. Don't break up the khutbah. So Abu Qadr, so that was like his nomination, Abu Qadr. So we ratified Abu Qadr's imam. He became our imam. And he had a short but productive 1 year, about a 1 year leadership, about 1 year, wasn't it? Because that's about 1981 now. And this was the national headquarters of a dawah effort that many of you who've been around for a while know, CRADE, Committee to Remove All Images that Attempted to Portray the Divine. We had a national movement about images in religion. Imam said that image of Jesus, of white Jesus, has a negative effect on people who don't identify in that image. People of color, blacks, Mexicans, whoever not of color. It has a psychological damaging. Plus, it's not true, but it has damage. And it also damages the one who identifies in the image. He believes he's like God. Oh, that's he see a white man up there, he says, oh, I'm closer to God. So it magnifies racial superiority, the idea of racial superiority. And Imam attacked that early on. So we had a campaign to get 10 million signatures from the public to discuss that issues between the leader of his Christianity, who at that time we styled it as the Pope of Rome, and the leader of Islam, who we styled it as Imam Muhammad. So we used to go to the people, standing at these stores and in the streets while we're doing what we do, and ask them to sign this petition so that this issue could be discussed. This is a big issue in religion. Imam brought that. We used to go to churches, these churches, especially in our neighborhoods all around Oakland, and with signs and demonstrate outside the church. Said, take those images down. You poisoning the minds of our people with that white image. And so it became a big issue in Oakland and all around the countries. The national headquarters for that effort was here. Imam Antar-Jannah, is he here? Imam Antar-Jannah was the national coordinator of that. Imam Al-Amin was his assistant. And so they began to send us these petitions all over the country, and we ended up having a million signatures. I think it ended up being about 1 million. We didn't get 10 million. The target was 10 million. We got 1 million signatures. Petitions stacked up all over here. So when we got all the petitions, we was trying to figure out what to do, and the leadership called us together and said, what we should do? We said, send the things to Rome so we can get the debate on between the imam and the pope. So we bundled the stuff up and sent it to Rome. It was a strategic mistake. About 4 or 5 months later, I guess the imam became aware of it, what happened. He showed up on Juma. Imams it down, the imam do it here. And the imam came and said that it was an error. You cannot put the leader, the international leader, in an international concern without first checking with him, which we were assuming, well, the campaign is about getting this debate on, and we consulted locally, but we didn't consult, and they asked us what we thought, and we said, let's get it, young enthusiastic, let's get the debate on. Mistake. So the imam removed Imam Al-Amin and Imam Antar-Jannah from that national effort, and then there were nominations for the leader to succeed, because the imam was bringing in this process of ratifying the imam, being nominated and being ratified, which he began he didn't tell us we had to select Imam Abu Qadir, but he suggested that we did, and we ratified it. In fact, himself, he didn't say, I'm on the imam, he said, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. And we said, Allahu Akbar, yes. So there was new nominations, and then our Imam Fahim Shuaib, who had been the assistant in some capacity to all the leaders prior to then, from the time he came in, as student minister, right? Under John Fakir. You hear from Billy a little bit of Billy. This is Billy X, rest in peace. He just returned to Allah last year, our minister, Billy X Stevens, the brother of Yusuf Bey. Yusuf Bey was gone, but Billy was still around, because Yusuf Bey had gone and started the bakery. At any rate, he had been assistant to him. He had been assistant to John Fakir. He got assistant to Fard Muhammad, a.k.a. Muhammad Abdullah, or vice versa. And also he was assistant to Andrew Hassan. And he also was assistant to Imam Abu Qadir al-Amin. So he was ratified as our new imam 1982. 83, okay? 83 in there. Because this is that makes us 32 years. Next year will be 33 years. 33 is significant. I'll come back to that. Y'all know why 33 is significant? Anybody know why 33 is significant? Why? That's true. Imam Muhammad's leadership is 33. We don't mean he's going to die now. But what revolution? Huh? Somebody said it? The whole cycle of Ramadan. It takes you 33 years from the time, if we had Ramadan this year, it's projected on the 18th by the calculators, who are arguing now that calculation is halal, first of all, it's legally permitted, and that it's better for the Muslims. And I'll say, I believe that opinion, although we still follow the other opinion of moon sighting.